Our first draft safety alert, Prevent Aerodynamic Stalls at Low Altitude, addresses the problem of fatal aerodynamic stall accidents that occur during maneuvering flight at low altitude in visual weather conditions. Based on our accident investigations, we have found that many GA pilots are failing to avoid the conditions that lead to an aerodynamic stall, recognize the warning signs of a stall onset, and apply appropriate recovery techniques. Many stall accidents that occur in visual weather conditions result when a pilot is momentarily distracted from the primary task of flying, such as while maneuvering the airport traffic pattern, during an emergency, or when fixating on ground objects. Mr. Chris Shaver will present our first accident scenario.
Thank you, and good morning. Just after takeoff on a VFR cross-country flight, a Piper PA-12 airplane collided with tree-covered terrain following a loss of engine power near Delta, Alaska. The 250-hour commercial pilot was killed, and the airplane sustained substantial damage. Multiple witnesses observed the takeoff and saw the airplane make a steep left turn back toward the airstrip just after the engine lost power. This map shows the airplane's approximate takeoff flight path, the location of the witnesses, the approximate point the engine lost power, and the accident site. The airplane departed to the northeast and passed over the witnesses at an estimated altitude of 200 to 300 feet. All of the witnesses stated that the engine did not sound normal as the airplane flew overhead. Witnesses stated that shortly after passing overhead, the airplane's engine went quiet, and the airplane made an immediate left turn, followed by a nose-down descent into the trees. As you can see, there's a road adjacent to the airplane's flight path and a large open field approximately 300 yards to the east. This photograph shows the airplane's wreckage at the accident site. The NTSB determined that the probable cause of this accident was the pilot's decision to make a low-altitude turn back to the airport following a loss of engine power, which resulted in an aerodynamic stall and loss of control. The reason for the loss of engine power could not be determined. In looking at this accident, there are a number of areas where opportunities existed that may have affected the final outcome of this flight. Pilots should know their options before they take off. This accident pilot did have available options that would have required only minimal maneuvering. Don't rely on instinct. Your instinct will usually try and tell you that the runway equals safety. You will lose time, altitude, and airspeed deciding what to do. It is always better to accept what you have in front of you. And do not attempt a course reversal at low altitude. They don't call it the impossible turn for nothing. And in any situation, maintain control of the airplane and fly all the way to the ground. There are measures that GA pilots can take to avoid being involved in accidents like this. Few pilots would disagree that a loss of engine power after takeoff is one of flying's most challenging situations. GA pilots need to train for these events. More than just a flight review every 2 years, every takeoff is an opportunity to train and sharpen skills. It has been said that one difference between a professional pilot and an amateur is an amateur pilot is surprised when something goes wrong. A professional is surprised when everything works right. Brief your takeoffs. Know your departure area. Simulate emergencies every chance you get. I can speak from personal experience that these actions can save your life. And in an emergency situation, save yourself, even if it means damaging the airplane. Metal can be repaired much simpler than the human body. This concludes my presentation. The next speaker for this topic will be Ms. Jennifer Rohde.
Thank you. Good morning. During a local flight, a Beech S-35 airplane, commonly referred to as a Bonanza, impacted a spent quarry just east of the Lake in the Hills Airport near Lake in the Hills, Illinois. The pilot and flight instructor, who had thousands of flight hours, were killed and the airplane was substantially damaged. The pilot and flight instructor were flying in the traffic pattern, conducting touch-and-go landings on runway 26. The wind was reported as 220 degrees, between 11 and 22 knots. Witnesses observed the airplane turning from base to final in a very steep bank. The description from the witnesses, the damage to the airplane, and the ground scars were consistent with the airplane being in an aerodynamic stall and spin at the time of impact. This photograph depicts the main wreckage as it came to rest in the spent quarry. The NTSB determined that the probable cause of this accident was the pilot's excessive bank angle while on approach to land, which resulted in an inadvertent aerodynamic stall and spin. This accident presents several different lessons that other pilots and flight instructors can learn from in order to prevent similar accidents. The pilot and flight instructor did not compensate for the stronger crosswinds and overshot the final approach course. The pilot and flight instructor attempted to correct for overshooting the final approach course by increasing the bank angle. By doing so, they increased the stall speed of their airplane. Instead of terminating the approach and continuing in the traffic pattern for a second attempt, the pilot and flight instructor allowed the situation to degrade until aircraft control was lost and a subsequent stall ensued. In the past 10 years, I have investigated multiple accidents where the pilot lost control of the aircraft while maneuvering in the traffic pattern. As both a commercial pilot and flight instructor, it is frustrating to continue to see these same mistakes over and over again. I view these stall accidents as preventable through increased vigilance during the flight and raised awareness of the characteristics of a stall through education and flight experience by the pilot or pilots responsible for the safe conduct of the flight. Pilots should be aware of the effects that wind has on their traffic pattern and adjust their flight path accordingly. If they have drifted in the traffic pattern to the point that excessive bank angles and maneuvering are required to get back to the final approach course, they are no longer in a stabilized approach and should initiate a go-around. A go-around and second approach to the runway may take a few more minutes and require more fuel. However, it's a small price to pay for the alternative of stalling the airplane in the traffic pattern and not living to fly another day. The next speaker will be Mr. Craig Hatch.
Good morning. While on a local pleasure flight, about 10 o'clock Central Daylight Time, an experimental, amateur-built Vans RV-6 airplane impacted water just off the shore of Lake Michigan. The private-rated pilot received serious injuries and the airplane was substantially damaged. Prior to departure, the pilot contacted another friend and told him to be on the beach and watch for the airplane. The accident pilot held a private pilot certificate and had accumulated about 105 total flight hours, with about 15 hours in the accident airplane. The pilot had a standing arrangement with the plane's owner to borrow the airplane. The pilot stated that as he approached the beach, he was at treetop level, was slowing down, and had his attention focused outside the cockpit. He added about halfway through a tight turn, there was a bump drop, and the left wing lost lift. That was the last thing he remembered. Several witnesses reported the airplane making low-altitude passes over the beach. On the fourth pass, the airplane appeared to drop, impacting the water just offshore. The NTSB probable cause in this accident was the pilot's low-altitude maneuvering, which resulted in an inadvertent stall and subsequent impact with the water. The pilot's aggressive maneuvering, such as large bank angles, can affect the stall speed of the airplane, as noted in the table. Although not a focus of the investigation or the safety alert, experimental amateur-built aircraft may not have the same stall characteristics as a certified airplane, may not have documentation of stall speeds, or the installation of warning devices such as a stall horn or angle of attack indicator. Based on the pilot's flight experience, it is likely that he didn't realize the stall characteristics of the airplane or the effect of bank angles on stall speeds. The natural progression of moving up to more performance from our typical training aircraft is something as new pilots we can look forward to. However, transitioning to new aircraft is critical time in any pilot's career, regardless of flight experience. The experimental amateur-built study conducted last year highlighted some of those hazards. While the type of aircraft was not a focus of this investigation, avoiding the temptation to show off, recognizing the warning signs, and avoiding aerodynamic stalls at low altitude would have prevented this accident.
The 3 accidents that staff just presented are summarized in the draft safety alert, Prevent Aerodynamic Stalls at Low Altitude. The safety alert also provides links to educational resources, and it offers pilots the following advice.
Seek training to ensure that you fully understand the stall phenomenon, including angle of attack concepts and how elements such as weight, center of gravity, turbulence, maneuvering loads, and other factors affect an airplane's stall characteristics. Remember that an aerodynamic stall can occur at any airspeed, in any attitude, and with any engine power setting.
Remember that the stall airspeed marked on the airspeed indicator typically represents flight speeds at 1G at the airplane's maximum gross weight in the specified configuration. Increasing bank angle can increase stall speed exponentially. Remember that reducing angle of attack by lowering the airplane's nose at the first indication of a stall is the most important immediate response for stall avoidance and stall recovery.
Manage distractions when maneuvering at low altitude so they do not interfere with the primary task of flying. Resist the temptation to show off for other people or a camera. This can be a deadly distraction. Understand the stall characteristics of a new airplane. This may differ substantially from an airplane from which you have more flight experience. This concludes the staff presentation on the safety alert topic. We are prepared to answer your questions at this time.